Hello and welcome to the Outside the Cockpit Formula One preview show powered by the Intermission Sports. Today, we're talking about, yes, the Mexico City Grand Prix that is happening tomorrow. Lights out is 2 p.m. Eastern, or the green flag, whatever you want to call it. And we're just going to get right into it, starting with our Friday practice rundown. Obviously, Friday was an interesting session as we saw Mercedes go quickest in FP1. You can see here, Valtteri Bottas setting the quickest lap time at a mid-18 3:41. Mercedes just about less than a second less than a second behind, less than a tenth behind him as well. Red Bull was right up there in the hunt, less than a tenth off and 2/10 off for Sergio Perez. AlphaTauri looked really strong as well. Alpine was obviously bouncing back after a horrific US Grand Prix, which saw them both retire due to technical or mechanical reasons. So it's great to see Alpine back up in the fight as well. Ferrari looked really strong in 6th and 8th. McLaren was one team that I was surprised not to see up there. They struggled. They finished, obviously down in 14th and 15th in FP1, setting really slow lap times, a minute 20, 1.9 seconds off the pace, almost 2 seconds there, which was, really in my mind, I was surprised by that because they had a decent US Grand Prix. Like Daniel Ricciardo finished in the top 5, top 10. And obviously, to go to Mexico, it's a little bit different because of the altitude change, how the cars were. Practice was really, the weather conditions weren't perfect, let's just say, for practice. It was super dusty, super low grip. Valtteri Bottas was even complaining about that as well, even for practice 2 as well. But then when we look at practice 2, obviously, Red Bull was still showing quite a bit of pace there as they were pulling up, obviously, in first. Obviously they were, a minute 17. Valtteri Bottas just off the pace, half a second off the pace because of that low grip, lower downforce, less downforce that Mercedes had. Again, Ferrari was really strong, and AlphaTauri, Pierre Gasly, who I'm really looking forward to see how well he does this weekend because I'm expecting him to have a strong weekend as well. And I think that's going to be the biggest taking point away from Friday practice was obviously Red Bull versus Mercedes is the big thing. Who's going to come up, who's going to get pole position, who's going to finish on top. But really, the battle between Ferrari and McLaren, and right now, Ferrari are winning that battle, showing that they have a much higher pace than the McLaren cars. Because we saw in FP2, again, 15th and 12th for Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo, again, setting really 6/10 off the pace between them and Ferrari. Obviously, Ferrari's a second behind, but then they're 6/10 slower than Ferrari. So clearly, that engine upgrade that Leclerc and Sainz got is proving to be crucial and proving that it did work as well because they have a massive increase in pace, which is obviously showing as well. Sebastian Vettel doing a great job, obviously in ninth right now, ninth running for FP2. He had a great session out there for Aston Martin. Obviously, a less than exciting one for Aston Martin last weekend at the US Grand Prix as well, because Lance Stroll collided with Nicholas Latifi, which caused him to spin out and damage his race. So that's great to see as well. Him up there, Yuki Tsunoda doing a great job as well. But obviously, that's not going to mean much as well because Yuki Tsunoda will be starting at the back. And that's something kind of I wanted to touch on next was the engine penalties that people were getting, because obviously Lando Norris, who's starting from the back, Yuki Tsunoda, and Lance Stroll are all starting from the back. And what's really interesting about this, and I know I touched about this last weekend before the US Grand Prix, and specifically about this, and specifically about more about McLaren and Lando Norris, is can Ferrari take advantage of that by, obviously McLaren's not having the greatest pace. They don't have a lot of pace in Mexico. That's been shown in FP1 and FP2 so far. As we speak, FP3 is going on. So I'm hoping that Ferrari, what they can do is they can take advantage of that. Say, hey, listen, obviously McLaren's not running as strong. Lando Norris is going to be starting from the back. We've got 2 against 1 in terms of battle against Daniel Ricciardo and obviously Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. You have 2 Ferraris versus 1 McLaren, who's probably going to be battling up in the top 10. So with that, you can really work on your strategy, and you can pick the best strategy that works for you, because that way then you're able to really get the best results. And this is, I think, the biggest argument, I think, that having a good second driver is, especially for top teams like Red Bull, Mercedes, or any top team, because when you just have one car starting in the front and you have 2 other, and your opponent has 2 cars, you are at a disadvantage. And right now, McLaren's at a disadvantage to Ferrari, and Ferrari needs to take advantage of that. They need to say, okay, you know what? We need to use this, for our benefit, and we need to really score major points, because right now, as it stands, I believe they're in a tight battle. Ferrari is still leading over McLaren in a very close battle. So obviously every race matters down to the end in Abu Dhabi. So I think as well, that's going to be crucial, specifically looking at these engine penalties this weekend, specifically with Lando Norris. Now, I was looking at Lance Stroll. It sucks for him because obviously he didn't have a great race last weekend at, the US Grand Prix. And I think because of probably the damage that his car incurred could be the reason why he's getting an engine penalty as well, or why he's switching power units to get that to start from the back of the grid. Yuki Tsunoda, looking at him, not really sure what the plan was behind him in terms of maybe just, again, they want to play it safe, maybe his reliability issues, whatever it is. Clearly, he's obviously not the one. He's not the main Red Bull car. He's not Pierre Gasly. So I think it's the best move to do. And that way, then, for the next 4 races after this, because we have Brazil, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and then Abu Dhabi after this coming up at a triple head as well, you can clearly see that they're focusing on having long-term stability for the rest of the season and then not having to make another engine change at the end of the season. Now, what was interesting about, speaking of engine penalties in general, it was noted that Max Verstappen reportedly is not going to take another engine penalty this season. He's just going to remain with the engine that he has in terms of the power unit, everything. Now, I don't know if that's going to be directly like a full power unit or potentially a new ICU, like a 5 or 10 place grid penalty, what the ruling is, because he hasn't really, I don't think, really taken maybe 1 or 2 at most, I think. So I don't know if his rule would come into effect where he would only be getting a 5 place grid penalty. So in that aspect, it is still interesting to see how that does play out, because obviously there's 4 races left after this weekend, right? So if he takes it not this weekend, but the next weekend, then after that, there's 3 more races. And so it's really a tough decision this late in the season to making these engine penalty changes. And I think that we probably won't see Mercedes or Red Bull, for their main drivers at least, make any engine changes. And as well, another thing that I think is really kind of on the mind, everyone wants to talk about this as well, the Red Bull team orders that might be in place this weekend for the Mexico City Grand Prix, obviously, because Sergio Perez, it's his home race. He wants to do well. He might be leading the race. Max Verstappen might be in second place. Lewis Hamilton might be like just behind him. He's like, hey, we got to do we got to switch. We got to team orders. We got to put me in first. And then that way we'll use, Sergio Perez as a pretty much a blocking parade of Lewis Hamilton. And me personally, it's like, okay, yes, I understand that obviously you're fighting for the championship. You're fighting for the drivers and the constructors championship as well. Your main driver, Max Verstappen, who's leading the drivers' championship by 12 points, obviously, getting the most amount of points is important. And if he's able to extend his lead further, because obviously the gap would be if it would be a 10-point difference in terms of, so if Max Verstappen finishes in first and Lewis Hamilton finishes in third, then obviously, depending on fastest lap or not, it's about a 9 or 10 plus gap. So right now they would expend it to 22 points or roughly about 21 points, which is, again, a major gap, because now when you think about it, 22 is pretty close to the difference in a race win. Now, in my mind, I don't think it's honestly the best thing to do. And here's why. Because Sergio Perez, if he leads the race, if he gets a great start, has a great strategy in leading the race, there's no reason for you to say to him, okay, you know what? Hey, I know you're leading your home race, but you know what? Listen, we need to protect the championship. Because in my mind, it doesn't matter if Sergio Perez gets first or second, or Max Verstappen gets first or second. What really matters is getting the most amount of points for the team as a whole. And if Sergio Perez is able to come home in first place, and then Max Verstappen is able to come in second place and Lewis Hamilton third or fourth or whatever the case is, then that's good in my mind. That's a win for Red Bull, because Max Verstappen still extends his lead, even if it's by 3 or more points. That extends his lead from 12 to 15 points, again, depending on fastest lap, because obviously second place gets 18, third place gets 15. So when you think about that, a 3-point plus margin of victory to extend his lead, again, isn't major, but it is a difference enough where, and as well, they're able to then to extend the lead in the constructors or get closer with Mercedes, because obviously, depending on where Bottas finishes, that's the biggest thing. Because if Bottas really struggles and Perez and Verstappen are up there, then in my mind, I don't see the necessary need to switch. The only situation that I can see it being a possibility of where they'd want to switch is if Verstappen, for whatever reason, if Hamilton's leading the race, Perez is second, and then Verstappen is third, because that actually then does make a difference of, okay, we're fighting for the driver's battle. Obviously, we want to do what's good for Max, and you finishing second or third is, it's, again, we're still going to finish the same amount of team points, but it's going to be a little bit better than for Verstappen to, reduce some of the instead of then really it would reduce be down to instead of a 2 point gap or 2 point lead, because again the 10 point difference between first and third, it would then only release down to, let's see here, it was a 25 to 18, so it'd be about a 3 point. So again, 3 or 4 points. So it's like the little minor things that might be making the difference in terms of, okay, does Red Bull want to do the team order change or not? And will, Sergio Perez respect that, understand that? What will his decision be? Because I think that's going to be a super interesting talking point that's kind of been circulating this weekend. But I think it's going to be super important as well to focus on that, because that's a huge aspect as well. And another aspect that is going to be big as well as being in Mexico, obviously, is the altitude change versus other circuits. And because they're closer to the sea, closer to the water level, the difference is about 1,500 meters in difference between like the next circuit. I think Interlagos is 800 meters above the sea level, and the Autodromo, the Mexico City GP circuit where they're racing at, is 15 meters above that. And really, and you're talking about, okay, well, how does that affect the drivers, or how does it affect the teams? It affects them in a major way because the air is much thinner and the cars run differently in terms of running a battery charge, running practice sessions, in terms of tire grip as well. It's very, very minute little details that make a difference in terms of the altitude change. And I think that's going to be a big factor this weekend. We've seen it already so far in terms of some of the pace between Mercedes and Red Bull. Is what are the conditions going to be, obviously, this afternoon when qualifying does start? I believe it's 4 or 5 p.m. when the session kicks off. And then if you look at that, who is going to get pole position, and then how are the conditions going to be changed on Sunday for race day in terms of the race pace, tire temps, what are the tire choices going to be? Is it going to be a 1-2 stop race? It really comes down to a few things, really. Is I'd say the tire performance, tire durability, or tire degradation, and just overall pace. I think those are the two big things that teams are kind of looking at this weekend in terms of how the altitude is affecting them and how they're doing their practice runs as well. Because having different sessions where different, like obviously for FP1, FP2, and FP3, you're trying different things. You're running different setups. Okay, let's run a little bit lower downforce here, higher top speed, different wing, different front wing, rear wing, how we want to gear changes and stuff like that. It's all minute little things that they're going to pick apart and look at the data to see, okay, where can we gain a tenth, like a fifth, like a half a second, not like half a second's a little bit tough, a little bit far there, but in terms of a tenth, 2/10, 3/10, whatever it is, in terms of the pace, because that could be the difference in getting pole position, getting a race win, getting the strategy right in terms of the undercut, overcut, whatever the difference is. So I think those are really the big things that are in terms of the altitude change, going from other circuits like the COTA, the Circuit of Americas, to the Autodroma in Mexico for the Mexico City Grand Prix, is the big altitude difference as well, which I think is going to play a big part as well in this race weekend. Now, obviously, qualifying is happening later today. I mentioned that. My qualifying predictions, this doesn't seem as a shocker. Like I've said this before, I am a Verstappen fan, but I think that as well, you see the latest pace that Red Bull's putting in, a minute 17 laps, maybe a minute 15, minute 16 for qualifying for Q3. I think, honestly, Verstappen will get pole. Hamilton's going to be really close behind him. Perez is going to get third. Bottas fourth. Sainz, I think, is going to respond in fifth. And then Gasly's just going to miss out in terms of he's going to finish sixth. That's kind of my qualifying predictions. And the reason why I say Verstappen is going to beat Hamilton, I think it's just going to be based on the fact that Red Bull have shown to be quicker before here, in terms of getting pole positions. Not necessarily they're going to get the race win, because that could be different, but in terms of getting the pole position and getting qualifying pace as well. Because we've seen before, again, I don't know exactly what the projections are for this weekend, but for last weekend as well, we saw certainly in qualifying predictions where Mercedes was quicker, but then the race predictions, Red Bull was quicker. So it's all different between qualified and race as well, in terms of the overall pace. And I think the biggest thing with that as well, I think the reason why Perez is going to outbeat, he's going to beat out Bottas and go past him, is I think obviously it's his home Grand Prix. He does well. Again, he's in a Red Bull car. It suits the track well. The car suits the track, or the track suits the car, sorry. It's his home race. He's going to be wanting to have a lot of motion. He's going to want to go and put a good performance. I don't think necessarily he's going to lock out. It's not going to be a 1-2. I think Hamilton is going to break up the two Red Bulls. That's kind of my prediction in terms of for qualifying. Now, in terms of the race on Sunday afternoon, again, similar, but I think that Verstappen's going to finish first. It could be because of team orders. Perez, I think, here's how I would say. Perez is going to get a great start. He's going to be leading the race. Verstappen's going to be in second place or third place, whatever it is, second or third. And actually, no, sorry, in second. And then Hamilton's going to be in third behind. And they're going to say, okay, team order swap. We need to swap because we need you to block Hamilton so that Verstappen can get the race win. That's what's going to happen. I'm sorry, but I mean, like, I know I mentioned my sentiment early, but I think that that's really going to be the case. Like, at the bottom line, most likely it could happen. So Verstappen either is going to go team by team orders, or he's just going to be leading the race. Regardless, Verstappen's winning. Perez is coming home second. Hamilton's going to finish third. Sainz, I think, and Gasly are going to beat out Bottas in terms of the top five. Sainz is going to finish fourth, and Gasly is going to finish fifth for me. He's shown really great pace, really great pace this weekend in terms of practice pace for the AlphaTauri. And I think honestly, this season we've seen some great strides in his performance during races as well, having top five performances. And I'd be really great to see him, not on the podium, but finishing top five for AlphaTauri. And then for Carlos Sainz, that would be huge as well, finishing top like fourth place, because that's a mass amount of points for for Ferrari in their battle with McLaren, because obviously the gap again is like 6.5, 7.5 points right now, the difference between McLaren and Ferrari. And in terms of the rest of the field, I think it's going to pretty much just go down, I think Charles Leclerc is just going to finish behind Bottas. I think Aston Martin's going to have another good day. Alpine, Fernando Alonso, Esteban Ocon, they're going to probably finish within the top 10. I mean, I highly doubt as well. I don't know where Daniel Ricciardo could finish as well. I just don't really feel that McLaren have the pace compared to Ferrari and the other cars, where they're just not on the same level in terms of overall speed, top speed, downforce, anything really. So I just think that they're not going to have the best weekend in my mind, and that's just my take on that. That's just what I think, because from last weekend and now to here, they're in a different track, different area. They've clearly been struggling a little bit with pace, and So, and that's pretty much going to do it for today's preview show on the Mexico City Grand Prix. My name is Sam Donzik. Thank you guys for joining me today. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out theintermissionsports.com for more content. We got NFL, NBA, NFL, everything on there. MLB, soccer, Formula One as well, motorsport content, all a bunch of motorsport content. Make sure to check it out, and happy Saturday.